everybody. Welcome back to Reflection Time. And today it's not just Reflection Time with Kathy, but with Kathy and Lisa, because I am so happy that Lisa's been able to join me. Some of you have met Lisa because she comes in and does assemblies for Key Stage 2. I'll be handing over to her in a moment. Our topic today is the word Sukkoth, which is actually the name of a Jewish festival. It's the Festival of Tabernacles, or booths. The word we would probably use though is tents. The Festival of Tents. That's probably the easiest way to think about it.
It's great to be with you this morning. My name's Lisa and I'm going to be helping Kathy with your reflection time. I'm used to being able to come and do it in person, but second best to be able to do it virtually, which is really, really great. Great to be with you today. Now, this morning in the Bible story, Israel wanders around the desert for 40 years. Now, as you know, deserts don't have a lot of water and food is hard to come by. So while they were in the desert, Israel had to learn to trust God. Every single day they had to trust Him that their food would arrive, and every single day they had to trust Him that they would find water. Now this morning I want to show you a bit of an experiment all about trust. So this morning I have 2 AeroPressers. These are usually made for making coffee, but today they're going to help us with our experiment. So the first thing I'm going to do is fill them with water. And put the cap on them. There we go, there's one cap. Let's fill the other one up. Right, so we've got 2 full AeroPressers, and then I'm going to take a piece of cardboard. Right, and let's see what happens. Well, what we would expect, eh? The water pours straight out of the AeroPress as it should. Now, I want to do this one more time. Now let's have a look at this one. Done exactly the same thing. But this time, hopefully, something different happens. Now, if you look over here, I have Abby and Emily, who've let me put my AeroPress full of water over the top of them. Oh, and there goes the water. Now, my daughters both saw me put the water in the AeroPress. They knew that the one AeroPress, when I tipped it, the water came flooding out. They knew there was danger. They knew that they could get wet because they'd seen the water pouring out of the one AeroPress. But then I did it to the second one, and they let me, even though knowing the water could come pouring out on their heads, let me put it over them and hold it above them. Why? Why were they not afraid? There was danger of getting wet, but they sat there very calmly, as you could see, without being afraid. You see, the key is this, is I told them to trust me. I told them that I would keep them dry. And as my daughters, they very kindly did trust me and were not afraid.
We'll be going back to Lisa again a bit later, but it's story time now. I wonder, have any of you been camping on a camping holiday? Put up your hand if you've been on a camping holiday. Okay, keep your hand up if you've really loved your camping holiday. Now, in our story today, we're going to talk about the children of Israel. That's from the Bible, the group of people that we call the children of Israel. It's a whole nation of people. Do you know what? The Bible tells us that they went camping for 40 years. How would you have liked that? Now, our story takes place more than 3,000 years ago, and it's just after the story that you probably know of when the children of Israel escaped from being slaves in Egypt. Do you remember that story? God sent Moses to be their leader, and Pharaoh, who was quite a nasty piece of work, would not let them go. He treated them so badly and he wouldn't let them go. And so God sent 10 dreadful plagues and they escaped from Egypt in a miraculous way. And then God took them through the Red Sea in a miraculous way. I hope you know these stories. But our story today comes after that. So the excitement of that is beginning to wear off. And instead of thinking, wow, isn't it wonderful what God did for us? They're thinking, oh, we're out in the desert now. What are we going to eat? What are we going to drink? Where are we going? Do you know what they did? They forgot all the wonderful ways that God had looked after them, all the wonderful things that Moses had done for them, and they started doing something that you and I sometimes do. They started grumbling. Can you all put on a grumbly face? Why did you bring us here, Moses? In Egypt we had everything we wanted. You've brought us here to starve to death. It's all your fault. They grumbled. And do you know what Moses did? He did what he always did when things were like this. He went to God and he said, Lord God, what shall I do about these people? And God said to him, you know what, Moses? I know it sounds like they're grumbling about you, but actually they're grumbling about me. They don't believe I can look after them. They don't trust me. The next morning, as God had told them, they woke up and they looked out of their tents, and all over the ground where the dew had been, there was sort of white, flaky substance, and they went and picked it up and tasted it. And it tasted like sweet honey wafer biscuits. And so they started to gather it up. And they didn't know what to call it. And so they called it manna, which means in Hebrew, what is it? And do you know what happened? Every day for those 40 years, God provided manna for them to eat every morning. And they would go out and they would gather it up, just enough for that day. Every day for the 40 years. And God said to the children of Israel, I want you to remember. I want you to remember this. I want you to remember that I have looked after you every day. Because when you remember, then you'll be able to trust me with the future. And then he said, to help you remember, I'm going to suggest that you set up a festival. Call it the Festival of Tabernacles, the Festival of Booths, or we might call it the Festival of Tents. And do you know what I want you to do? I want you to remember when you lived in tents in the wilderness. I want you to build pretend tents. Maybe they'll look a little bit like a gazebo. I want you to put branches on the top of them. Maybe decorate them with fruit. Every year, do this. And when you do it, remember that I have always looked after you and I always will. Let's go back to Lisa, shall we?
Now, what I want you to think about this morning, what I want you to reflect on this morning is this. Can you trust God? I believe you can. I believe He's absolutely trustworthy. So I want you to think this morning about the things that you need to trust God with today. Are the things that are stressing you out? Are the things that you're worried about? Are the things that you can't control and you don't know how to fix? Well, I want to ask you to think about trusting God with those things. Tell Him about what's worrying you. Tell Him about what you're stressed about and ask Him to help you with those things. My daughters trust me because they know me. And I believe I know God. And I believe that He is absolutely trustworthy because He has never, ever let me down. And I believe you can trust Him today. So give it some thought right now. Reflect on it. What are some things that you need to trust God with today?